Good morning, Chicago. What is up, Bears fans? Welcome to the Bears Huddle podcast here in the UK, guys, bringing you all your latest Bears news. Now, look, we're going to talk today, a few different things we're going to go through. Next video that comes out later today, we're going to talk about the undrafted free agents the Bears have signed, but we are going to talk in this video about the running back position. Many people have said that, look, you look at the Bears offense, you've got the quarterback now, hopefully. You've got the wide receiver depth with the addition of Luther Burden III. You've got the tight ends now with the addition of Colston Loveland. You've got the rebuilt O-line with Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, obviously and Drew Dahlman. But one area that's seen as a bit of a concern that many people thought would be addressed in that NFL draft was the running back position. I think there was a lot of expectations before the draft that the Bears would take a running back high in this draft, either in the first round or the second round. However, that never materialized. The only running back, of course, drafted in the draft was Kyle Monagai in the 7th round. And, you know, look, 7th rounders can come good. There's been 7th rounders in the past. There's Hall of Famers who are probably 7th rounders. Can't remember, I think of any off the top of my head at the moment, but there we go. You know, so Monagai looks a decent prospect. I mean, he's got some decent stats there. He's decent. I watched a couple of bits of his tape the other day, and I know that YouTube videotape can make anybody look good. Let's face it. He was demolishing runners. He's not fast particularly, but he is strong, and that's his trait. He's a power back rather than a speed back. I mean, in terms of his last year at Rutgers, he was unanimous first team All Big Ten. He had 0 fumbles on 676 career carries, so never fumbled the ball. Career stats: 3,222 yards, 27 TDs, 4.640. He's forced 139 missed tackles, first in the NCAA since 2023. So look, he has got some potential there, but he's certainly not a day one starter. I think the expectation was very much that the Bears would go for Ashton Jeanty if they could get him, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, someone, Cam Scatterbo, someone like that. That was very much the expectation. But obviously expectation and reality are two different things. So as it presently stands on the 28th of April, we go forward now with this current depth chart on the running back. Now, look, I know there's no depth chart. Coach Johnson said that himself the other day, that everybody's position is up for grabs. But this is just going off the ESPN post-draft depth chart. That's not easy to say. So DeAndre Swift obviously is the number one. Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monagai, and Travis Homer are the 4 running backs currently on the Bears staff. So look, that's what we're going in with at this moment in time. Subject to change, subject to, something happening, subject to, I don't know, whatever happening. Now, a lot of people have talked about possibly going out and getting a running back. There's been talk of Nick Chubb, given the fact that Browns are very active in drafting draftees, a number of running backs. Whether that happens or not, who knows? Who knows? Nick Chubb is a free agent, but at the end of the day, how much is it going to cost to get hold of him? That's the big question. People have talked about perhaps bringing him in, but at the moment the Bears have not got a fantastic amount of cap space. I think it's about $9 million. Obviously, you need some of that to sign your draft picks. So, there's not the space there at this present moment in time to sign Chubb. Now, obviously, that money could be generated through contract restructures, releases, etc., trades, things like that. There is an opportunity there. People are talking about the Nick Chubb era being over in Cleveland. But the GM of Cleveland said it's not necessarily over. He said that he did say that the complexion of their running back room has changed. And so he says, we're going to obviously work through the undrafted free agent process, take a breath on Sunday, and we'll reassess where the roster is and the opportunities available to us on the veteran market. Then we'll operate from there. Nick Chubb is an outstanding running back. Of course he is. And obviously, there's a lot of talk, like I said, surrounding him. So, he could be an option that the Bears do look at. But like I said, they're going to have to generate some cap space first. I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that a lot of Bears fans have a complete lack of faith in DeAndre Swift. He was not great at all last season, and he has been seen as someone who has massively underperformed for the Bears. He isn't a bad player. That's the thing about him. He is not a terrible player. He came over from Philly, where he had over 1,000 yards rushing in 2023, averaged 4.6 yards per carry, 5 TDs. Last season, rushed for 959 yards on 253 carries, averaging 3.8 yards per carry, 6 TDs. I suppose some of that has got to be couched in the terms of that he was working behind a very, very inadequate offensive line and with a rookie quarterback. He has obviously played previously for Detroit, so it could be that Ben Johnson actually likes DeAndre Swift, that he sees DeAndre Swift as a potential player. Although, he never had any real standout seasons in Detroit, did he really? I mean, his last season in Detroit in 2022, 99 carries, 542 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, 5 TDs. 151 carries in 2021. That was his high. 617 yards, 4.1 average, 5 TDs. So, he does have experience of Ben Johnson. Maybe Ben Johnson sees him as being the option, that we don't desperately need any top level running back. However, Ryan Poles did speak very openly about what the situation was with the running back. All the gossip, all the talk going into the draft was that the Bears were going to trade up, the Bears were going to take Ashton Genty, the Bears were going to jump ahead of Las Vegas to get Genty. That was all the gossip, and of course that never played out, did it? It didn't happen. The Bears standard stayed at 10, took Colston Loveland, and the Raiders ended up with Ashton Genty. And I've got no doubt that Ashton Genty will go on to have a very, very successful NFL career. But look, I think, even if you look at it in terms of bringing someone in to complement DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson obviously is there at the moment. It may be that Ben Johnson, no relation, sees something in Roschon Johnson that he likes and that he sees him as being the perfect complement. We don't know. We've got to trust the coaches in this process. We really do. Now, I think, like I said, a lot of us expected the Bears to take a running back in the early rounds. Like I said, they'd had a number of running backs in for pre-draft visits. People, like I said, had talked very much of Amarian Hampton, of Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson. All those players were talked of and discussed by the Bears. However, it was decided that, that wasn't the way to go. And I think a lot of it, was kind of down to the board not really cooperating with what the Bears wanted, where they saw running backs as being the best value, where they saw running backs as being the best to take those running backs in this draft. I think there was a lot of that in this. Certain players I think that they wanted kept getting selected ahead of them by other teams. I mean, Ryan Poles was very open when he spoke about this in the post-draft process. I think a lot of it was just simple, very, very bad luck for Ryan Poles. And I don't think, yes, he'll get some criticism over this because there's a lot of Bears fans who don't give Poles credit for anything and don't like Poles. But that's just how it is. And I think as a GM, as a head coach, as whoever you are, you've got to kind of accept that criticism. I think the situation was very much with, once the Genty situation had passed by, there was never really expectation, I think, that the Bears would take Amarian Hampton at 10. He obviously went to the Chargers later in the draft, which, I think was always going to happen, that he was going to go late first round. Then obviously, you've still got, at that point, going into day 2, you've got Quinshon Judkins on the board, you've got Travion Henderson on the board, you've got Caleb Johnson on the board. The Bears picked 39, obviously, and I think, again, unlucky there that both Judkins and Henderson were taken before the Bears came to pick at 39. Obviously, Cleveland took Quinshon Judkins at 36, probable heir apparent to Nick Chubb, and then, obviously, the New England Patriots took Travion Henderson. Again, that was at 38, one pick ahead of the Bears. Now, at that point, I think, that Ryan Poles looked at it and kind of saw it, I think, has been too early to take Caleb Johnson, too early to take any of the other running backs, Cam Scatterbo, etc. So obviously, and also with the fact that Luther Burden was still on the board, Luther Burden, who many projected as probably the best wide receiver in this draft, it was, I can't think, seen as too much of an opportunity to turn down. So obviously that was the option, to take Burden at the 39th pick. Now, obviously we got beyond that, and again it got to the Bears traded back to the 56th pick. I think again they perhaps saw that as too early to take the likes of Bashal Tutin, Cam Scatterbo, Caleb Johnson, and didn't take him, and it's just the way it fell. And obviously Caleb Johnson eventually went to the Steelers. Now, with Chicago then going into the fourth round, there were again, as I featured on my X and on the community tab on here, there were a lot of running backs still available at that point. Damian Martinez, Bashal Tutin, Cam Scatterbo. But again, it was kind of a bad luck story. Chicago picked 109. Bashal Tutin went at 104 to Jacksonville. Cam Scatterbo went at 105 to the Giants. So again, 2 players missed out on. They were gone by the time we came to pick. There was the trade back then to get some more draft value. By the time we obviously came to pick, and you could argue that maybe that trade back wasn't the best option, but it did give us extra picks and chances to bring in extra players, and we can discuss the merits of the players that the Bears selected. Of course we can. I mean, my views on the linebacker. I think that the pick of Hoppolite is a massive overreach, and I just genuinely don't understand it. But hopefully in time he'll prove me wrong. I think there were plenty of targets, but by the time we got to that traded back pick that we got, I think again a lot of running backs had gone, and again we've kind of had that kind of a very hard luck story, and I think given the fact there were other needs on the team as well as running back, you looked at it and I think the Bears prioritised the O-line, they prioritised the D-line, they prioritised cornerback, they prioritised those other positions they felt were perhaps more in need than the running back room. And like I said, we don't know realistically what Ben Johnson thinks of DeAndre Swift, of Roschon Johnson. Now, the Bears obviously did take Kyle Monagai in the 7th round. It may be that Kyle Monagai comes good. That it may be that he is an option for the Bears later on. He will obviously come good and be a player that we can depend on this season. There's been a number of players obviously in the NFL who've been 7th rounders or UDFAs that have gone on to kind of be a success. So you never know with those players what's going to happen, and hey, anything's possible. Now, obviously, the Bears have also got a running back that they've taken as an undrafted free agent, Deion Hankins at Texas State. So again, a UDFA running back. And again, like I said, there's been examples of UDFA running backs who've gone on to have great success, win Super Bowls with their teams, go into the Hall of Fame, etc., etc. So, look, at the end of the day, we don't know what the future holds. It may be that Kyle Monagai is a massive success, and we look back on this process and say we didn't need any of those other running backs. Or Deion Hankins comes through training camp, really impresses, is signed to the roster, is added to that depth chart, and suddenly becomes a great success in Chicago. Again, we don't know what the situation is there. So look, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts. How are you feeling about the running back position in Chicago at this point in time? What do you think of the draft strategy? Do you think we got it wrong? Do you think the trade backs cost us? What do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching the Bears Huddle podcast this morning. Hope you have a great day. Please obviously like, comment and share. And obviously subscribe to the channel to help us keep growing. Guys, went through 150 subs this morning. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support. We are obviously aiming to get to 1,000 as soon as possible. The sooner we can get monetized, the more we can do with the channel. We're also going to get our live shows going as well very soon as well. So look out for those where you'll get a chance to participate. I'm very different to a lot of podcasters in the fact that I do take your comments exceptionally seriously. I do read your comments out, and I treat podcasts when I haven't got guests on as a bit of a conversation between me and you. As a bit of a talk between me and you. Yes, I'm the one who sits up here and spouts crap for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever. But your input is just as important as mine. So thank you for watching, and let's bear down.